Okay, so I think we are good to start already. So I'm going to share my screen to everybody. Okay, Edwin, I see the chat. We're very sorry. We'll come back to you about that job you applied for. Okay, yeah, we have a lot of participants now. We can start. Let me share my screen with the presentation. It's not sharing, right? So technical issues. I'm sorry, everybody. Okay, so I think you can all see my screen now with the presentation. So we are ready to start. First of all, as I was saying before, I wanted to thank you all for joining us in this webinar about bootstrapping your startup. My name is Gers Fisman. I am the data manager and consulting manager of StartupBlink. I've been working for the company for the last 3 years, more or less. So yeah, I've been looking at this. Even if I'm not the founder of StartupBlink, I've been looking at the journey Ellie has been having for the last years of bootstrapping the company. So I can tell you a little bit about how all this has been working out. I'm based in Spain. I'm based in Madrid. I'm actually not in Madrid right now. I'm in my home country, which is Venezuela at the moment. But yeah, really interesting ecosystems. Please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat. It will be really interesting if you introduce yourselves in the chat and tell us your name, the location from which you're hearing us, the project you're currently working on, and any other interesting stuff that you think would be cool for us all to know. Okay, so yeah, let's start. Basically, this is a presentation about bootstrapping your business. Okay, so the first thing, of course, would be to define bootstrapping and what we currently understand as bootstrapping. So basically, it's the bootstrapping is the self-funding of your business without outside investment. It can be interpreted as without investment at all besides the founders, or without professional investment, like without angel funding, VC funding, or any other kind of big professional funds. So in some cases, we'll be interpreting it like it's acceptable to have friends and family. It's still a bootstrapping business. Okay. So yeah, how do you bootstrap your business? The initial investment is generally your own time and money. You dedicate your risk in your own. You risk your money and your time in your own project. You put your money where your mouth is, basically. So that's, as we'll see in some of the next slides, this can have positive and negative impact on the startup, of course, and it's not for every startup. So one of the important things is, of course, to reach profitability as soon as possible by running to the marketing to the market and selling your product, your service as soon as possible, because you can't be expecting to have a big salary from the money you raise from VCs, right? And yeah, one of the main reasons people do this, basically one of the main reasons people don't go out after external professional investment is that you remain with all or most of the equity of the company. So of course, this is a big plus when you have the full control of your company, both because you can basically operate as you want without having to report or ask permission from anyone, and also because in a potential case of an exit, you'll get all or most of the price, right? So you'll get the whole pot of gold. So, and you won't have to share it with many people besides your co-founders. Okay, so topics for today. So when we're talking about my projects, this is actually a presentation made by Eli, my boss, the CEO of StartupBlink. So I'll be talking a little bit about his past projects. We'll also be talking about how to decide if the project, the startup you're working on, is suitable for bootstrapping, or if it's better for you to go after investors and find external professional money. It's a big question to have. It's one of the biggest decisions a startup founder has to make, given that it will definitely determine the way in which the startup operates and how fast it will need to reach profitability, what are the acceptable growth rates, because VCs usually expect massive growth rates that and they won't accept smaller growth rates that might be acceptable for you, right? So it's a huge question you have to ask as a founder, and it definitely will impact the nature and the operation of your business. And then we'll also discuss some strategies and tactics that are commonly used in bootstrapping, given the nature of this concept. Okay, so cool. Well, this is a bit of a let's say promotion of StartupBlink. StartupBlink is a global startup ecosystem app we're working on, so I'll talk more about it shortly. Okay, so basically, so about StartupBlink. StartupBlink is a company that was born at 2013. It was born as a side project, okay, by Eli and a couple of friends, and from a side project, it grew to a full-fledged business that is currently the leader in startup ecosystem mapping, ranking, consulting, researching, etc. So the current revenue source is of StartupBlink is its work with a lot of government and other organizations around the world that want to develop their startup ecosystem. So basically, we offer services of promotion, consulting, research, databases, etc. So some of these partners that we work with are Taiwan Tech Arena, Basel Area, Startup Singapore, Enterprise Singapore, Response Innovation Lab, JETRO in Japan, la Cámara de Comercio de Cali, Kingston Economic Development in Canada, Open Yokohama. But we have many others, so yeah. In StartupBlink, we have a couple of products. You may know them. We have the map, in which you can all check out the map for free. We have almost 100,000 startups there, and with that database that comes with the map, we analyze using an internally built algorithm. We analyze startup ecosystems around the world and rank them according to their strength. So you can go to this link, startupblink.com, and check out, play around with the map, see the leaderboards. It's free to use. We also have the Pro product, which is an extension, but in general, the site is free to use, and you can also add your own startups to the site, also for free. Okay, so basically you just open an admin account and add your startup, and this will immensely help us in researching the startup ecosystem in which you're in, and correctly mapping it and ranking it in our reports. And then you also have the free report that we have, a report.startupblink.com. Please go there and you can download it. We use a lot of data partners: Crunchbase, SEMrush, Meetup, Coworker, Findexable. We work with them to have as updated and good data as possible. Okay, so how was StartupBlink born? As I was saying, StartupBlink was born in 2013 as a side project. Eli also was working, given that it was a bootstrap business, he didn't have income from StartupBlink at the moment, so he had to, let's say, subsidize. We'll talk about it later. He had to subsidize his life with freelancing projects, etc., that he was doing also, and he was also working on a previous startup, LingoLearn, that was about language learning. So that's more or less the story of StartupBlink. We work with ecosystems. You can see unicorns, exits, investors, high quality, clients. What we want to let's say, what we want to show here is that the ecosystem in which you're at is very important, and our clients know it. Startup founders that go to our page know it. So it's very important because the access you have to all these players, the ones I mentioned, the investors, high quality clients, co-founders, talent, suppliers, etc. So it's very important where you are and where you decide to start your startup. Most people, of course, don't really have the choice of where to start it, but we like to say that if you have the choice of the ecosystem and you are in an underperforming one, you have to leave it to go to a better one in which you can gain access to this to better networks, or lead it and try to develop your startup ecosystem as an influencer of the ecosystem, and helping developers of the ecosystem attract relevant players, etc. Okay, cool. So this, of course, just as a side note, we talked about investors before. So even if you're bootstrapping your business, this still applies to you, the ecosystem at which you're at, because it's not only investors, as you said, as you saw. It's clients, it's accelerators, it's other founders, mentors, etc. So this is very much relevant to bootstrap startups. So yeah, you have here a sample of the top ecosystems in Europe. Let's okay. So that's it about the StartupBlink. If you have any questions, please let us know. Let me check it out. Not questions so far. Okay, so all right, the big question, the one that we mentioned before: investors, go after investors, or go with self-funding. Okay, so yeah, basically we know how uncertain, how risky, how volatile startups are. This is a well-known fact. Much less than 10% or even less than 5% of startups survive more than 1 or 2 years. So it's essential for you to have a strategy for yours, okay? So the big question is, if you, the end goal is mostly, in an ideal world, you would have the 100% of your equity. Okay, so if you can do it by yourself, that's the way you do it, right? But it's generally not the case. You will need partners, and you will need, in many cases, more money. So can you do self-funding? So these are some questions that you may ask to yourself to understand if it's a good idea for you to do self-funding. So is it a cash flow operation targeting a specific niche, or a startup that has a very, very much larger scope? Okay, so cash flow operations are really good for bootstrapping, of course, because you just need a landing page, get some clients, get some providers, try some kind of a marketplace that has worked in another niche, and you bring it to your specific niche in which you are knowledgeable of, and you can very quickly, with a landing page, even no code tools, you can build something really quickly and start having a cash flow operation that allows you to sustain yourself. If you want to be the owner of the world, make a Google, a Facebook, or whatever, you'll definitely need investment. You'll definitely need investment because you need a lot of money to build these companies. A lot of money and you won't see revenue for a long time, because it's weird businesses. So basically, more traditional businesses that have a cash flow operation are more smart to have as self-funding. Developers are, if you need a lot of developers, it's very hard to do bootstrapping because they are very expensive. Is there a clear validated business model? Okay, direct competitors who make money. That's a good let's say it's a good clue. A good clue that a startup can be self-funded if the business model has been validated before and you're just doing a twist to it. Okay, so that's a good clue. Because if you're discovering the business model, if there's no case study to work on, you'll be pivoting a lot. You'll have a lot of expenses and revenue will be delayed. So it's difficult for self-funded startups to pivot a lot. I'm not saying they can't. Of course they can. Mostly today that building stuff is cheaper than ever, but still, you'll need to find something in which you can make revenue as soon as possible, because you can't delay that at self-funding. Okay, another question: is there a clear pain you're solving? Okay, if there is, it's easier to start making money since the beginning. Okay, the operation will be cash flow. Will have cash flow soon enough, and you can start thinking about dedicating more of your savings or whatever. If you have to educate the market, that could take a long time. So it's not an ideal business. It's probably not going to be an ideal business for bootstrapping. Can you start selling something now? yeah, if you can, of course, that is a good let's say a signal for self-funded startups, because because of everything we mentioned in the first point about cash flow operations. Do you have the skills to do most of the work yourself or your co-founders? Another good signal for bootstrappers, because you won't need to do so much hiring at the beginning, which is the biggest, well, not necessarily the biggest, but one of the biggest expenses for startups. Okay, so yeah, basically, if you're not close to the market, investors are a must. Okay, so here we have a small list of very, very famous and successful bootstrapping businesses. Basically, some of them raised money at some point, but when you delay this raising of funding from venture capitalists and angel investors or any other kind of professional investors, this allows you to have more leverage when you are raising. So you don't have to leave so much equity on the table. So if you're a relatively big operation, it's easier for you to raise money on your own terms. So here we have some examples of very successful businesses: GitHub, MailChimp, 37 Signals, TechCrunch. I'm not sure about the last two, but I know GitHub had an exit. It was bought by Microsoft. MailChimp had a huge exit. I don't know if this year or last year they exited for 10 billion. They were sold to Intuit. So basically, imagine you're able to create a company like MailChimp and keep most of the equity and then sell it for 10 billion. It's crazy. So that's the one of the very positive sides of the bootstrapping model. And yeah, besides the famous cases, there are of course many more startups that have followed the bootstrapping model. They conquer their niche, they generate great income, but they are not necessarily in the news or in the this kind of Crunchbase news or TechCrunch or whatever. They probably won't make it because they haven't had a big exit or a raising. But there are a lot of startups following the model and making their owners money. Okay, so bootstrapping is becoming popular. The popularity of bootstrapping is just growing, and I am convinced that it will keep growing very fast, especially in these years that funding is going to be much harder than it was in the last 2 or 3 or maybe 5 years, So, and there are some reasons behind this. It's becoming cheaper than ever to launch a startup due to the great amount of tools that just allow you to not have great personnel or great technology expenses. So yeah, basically the Dropbox, the Skype, every platforms like Upwork that allow you to hire talent from other countries with cheaper salaries. So it's getting cheaper. It's getting cheaper. That's something you need to be very aware of. There are tools. It's getting easier with no-code tools, automation tools, etc. So it's just getting easier and cheaper to launch your startup, to build an MVP, which is the second point. The Lean Startup MVP methodology, the minimum viable product, in which you don't have to build the whole thing before launching. You can launch something that is still under construction, but you launch it as soon as possible to get feedback, see if you can validate it and change it if you need to. And you don't have to spend months or years and a ton of money to build the product to then realize that there is really not a market. Okay, the third point is that the bootstrapping model aims for lower disruption. It's generally applying some technology to more traditional businesses, so chances of success are higher. And the fourth point of why bootstrapping is becoming popular is that there are horror stories with raising money. There are very big disadvantages, and we'll check them out in the next slide. So yeah. Okay, so why wouldn't you want investors in your startup? Okay, so basically, just to make it clear, we're not bashing investors here. I mean, there are very legitimate reasons to want investors, professional investors, in your startup, and not just because of them providing money, but also providing networking and providing know-how. But they are, even though they do have positives, they also have negatives, and we'll see them in this slide. Raising money, it's extremely time-consuming. It's basically a full-time job, and you also have your full-time job of building the startup, and it just gets you out of focus of building. Okay, so it can be a big problem due to this. It's very difficult also, in the sense that you will need a good network. You will need to know the right people, and if you don't, chances really are against you. It's the numbers of startups, even though they make all the headlines, the number of startups that actually raise money is extremely low. Third point, you are no longer your own boss. Basically, because you are sharing the property of the business. You have to do reporting to the board, which is no longer yourself and your co-founders, but also the investors. So, and this reporting comes with also decision-making sharing at the strategic level with the other partners. This can be positive, of course, also, but in general, if the business is small and has to move fast, it's not a good thing to have. Investors might not be fun to deal with. A new partner, in some cases, you can get fired. There are many examples of this. The main one is Steve Jobs getting fired from Apple. Investors will always push you toward liquidity. They will not be happy with a stable cash flow business like you may be. They will always push you towards a hyper growth. Basically, the investors really like to spread and pray. So basically, if you start being successful, it will never be enough success, because they are happy with having 10 or 20, depending on the portfolio, of having a lot of startups die if there's one that goes like 10 or 100x, you know. But they will never be happy with a stable cash flow. That's a fact. Too much money is sometimes distracting, yeah, because it basically allows you to become a stale company that is not innovating. It's not necessarily growing, but it gives you the time to keep on building something nobody needs or wants. And yeah, when you delay investment, you can hope for you can go for higher valuation and better terms for your company and your particular equity. Okay. So there are of course also some lifestyle possibilities that come with bootstrapping, with the freedom of being your own boss. This is basically the example of Ellie, but everybody can adapt their lifestyle as they wish if they are able to bootstrap a business, and especially a technological business. Ellie has been a digital nomad since 2010 and has lived in more than 60 countries. He has this self-funding of his startups that allows him a lot of flexibility in his lifestyle. He has also a post on a blog and podcast on nomadic lifestyle, becomenomad.com, if you're interested in this subject. Okay, let's talk about how to finance your self-funding. We mentioned it at the beginning, but let's go deep into it. It's this thing they call the subsidy model, in which you basically want, if you're a bootstrapper, okay, and you're not rich, okay, you have to make ends meet every month. So if you quit your job or something, it can be very problematic to last a long time, okay, because you have costs, both personal costs and business costs, etc. So and there's the assumption that startups include a lot of trial and error, and will be hard for them to be profitable for the first few years. Okay, so the subsidy models establishes that bootstrappers should have let's say a side job or an income stream that allows them to sustain themselves and their startup. So besides going into bootstrapping your startup, it's very recommended to build this subsidy model, this income stream that will allow you to finance your lifestyle and your startup. Okay, so what Eli did when he was building StartupBlink was that he had some initial savings, okay, but he was also freelancing, doing business models, business plans, etc. Okay, so bootstrapping sources. Besides once mentioned the subsidy model, we can go for all the traditional sources you can get money from, which the first one would be, first one and most common one is funded from your savings and subsidize it, what we were mentioning before. Get a loan. We'll go to this. We'll go in depth through all of this because they of course have their pros and their cons. So I'll just mention them now. Get a loan, get a grant. Okay, grants are basically money that is given by mostly governments, but also some other kind of organizations, and you get money. Basically, you get money for free without giving up equity or having to pay back a loan. Crowdfunding, all these I don't have the name right now, but yeah, you know what, there are a lot of companies that do this, the crowdfunding model. Accelerators, and of course the most important thing you'll have to understand is that it is ideal to start selling from day one or week one or month one of the operation, to be able to sustain at least partially the startup. But yeah, as it says there, it will rarely be enough to make immediate profit for yourself and your partners. Okay, so here are some of the top funding sources of startups. Basically, as I was saying before, personal savings and credit are the biggest the biggest source of funding. Then you have friends and family that represent around a third of personal savings and credit. Then you have venture capital that is a third of friends and family, the same as angel investors. And then you have banks and crowdfunding. There are a very, very small piece of the pie at around $5 billion. So yeah. Here's a bit of a recommendation about something about friends and family. It's something that really, really needs to be taken with a grain of salt. Sometimes if you start your business and you get your family excited, they will probably be excited to invest in your idea or your business, but it is very important for you to make clear to them what are the possibilities of failure. So telling them, look, thank you. It will be very, very. I'll appreciate it very much to receive this funding, this help, but I want you to be clear that this is very risky. That startups, less than 10% of startups are successful. So you don't have to have uncomfortable situations with family members, 5 or 10 years after you found your startup, and also be careful of the amount of money you get from them. Don't get 100% of their life savings, but if they have like $10 million, if they're rich, they have $10 million in their bank, and it's not bad to accept, $10 or $50,000. But if they have 100,000 in savings and they're giving you 80,000 or 70,000, it's a bit crazy, and it's not recommended in general. Okay. Okay, so I see there's an anonymous attendee that had a question of how do we found non-equity accelerators? Look, this research, the best way of doing this is a lot of work. So it needs research. It needs research. Google, visit the accelerators in your local accelerators, ask them, etc. I mean, I don't know of any way of any tool that will allow you to filter accelerators, but by non-equity. I don't. Yeah. So the recommendation is to researching them both online and offline, and also it's not necessarily the thing is, accelerators, as we'll see shortly, are generally not very ideal for bootstrappers. For example, Y Combinator just won't accept a bootstrapper. They just want hyper growth, and many other accelerators are of the same idea. Okay. So yeah. Okay, let's go with the first source of funding, and a bit of let's granulate it a little bit. It's self-funding is very good for your startup. It's I know not everybody has savings. Not everybody can dedicate those savings to startups, but if you do, it creates a self-commitment. You become accountable to yourself of growing and get on making your startup a success. It signals commitment to co-founders and other stakeholders, also investors. They once you have you are committed there with money, like it's not just stock. They will see you with other eyes, and it also allows you to start quickly. It's not I mean, it shouldn't take much time to put your money into work. Okay. So self-funding solutions, these are some platforms that will allow you both to gain income while you're building your startup, and also find good talent, good freelancing talent for your startup. Okay, so for this, some jobs will allow you to work while building an MVP, especially jobs that are not necessarily at the traditional 9 to 5 times. So if you work night shifts or work on weekends and are able to sustain yourself with these are good jobs to be building a startup in parallel. Consulting in your field of expertise, as I was saying, Eli, he's an economist, an accountant, and he used to do some business consulting work as a freelancer when he was launching Lingo Learn and StartupBlink, his two startups, and also freelance for your network, okay, or platform. Cool. So loans and credits. Yeah, so they are, of course, a great way of funding, and they are the traditional way of getting money. But depends on your situation, of course. If you have uncertainty about the demand of your product or service, you should avoid them, because it's just the uncertainty of it could be very hindering in the future for you. Okay, make sure you can repay the loan even if the startup fails. So basically, don't get an extremely high loan that you can't pay after if you go to bankruptcy with your startup. This is probably not an issue in many countries, but there are places in like America or some countries in Europe in which banks try to shove the loans down your throat, and this could be a very, very big problem if the startup doesn't make it. And also, it is very important also to cap your loss, to rationally, when you're starting your project, decide how much is the maximum amount you're willing to spend before you cut your losses. In the same way as when you are buying when you're buying a stock or a bond or whatever, you put this stop loss when you are in the moment you're buying it, so you don't get too emotional once the instrument starts falling. So it's very, very, very recommended to make the decisions once you're in a cold head and you're rational, and not 2 years before when you might have become already emotional about the project. Grants. Okay, so as I mentioned before, grants are generally from the government. They are money that is offered also by corporations, etc., and they usually don't require to give equity, to give up equity. But the thing is, like the investor path, they are really, really time consuming. So the process takes a lot of time and effort. And some grants require future revenue share and alignment with certain rules, therefore might damage your chances of raising investment or running the operation of your business in the future. Accelerators, they are programs, I think many of you already know them, programs of fixed time. They provide mentors, some money for equity, but as I mentioned before, the best accelerators like YC are aiming for huge exits, unicorns, etc., and they probably are not happy with bootstrappers joining them. They are very good if you need education about startups, about business. They are like a mini MBA. They are very good for connections to investors and other relevant startup stakeholders in your location. And yeah, a good thing is to check mentors and alumni review before committing, because some of them are definitely not worth your time. Crowdfunding. These are some of the examples that I forgot earlier. Kickstarter, Indiegogo. They are cool. They are basically based on a viral campaign. So if you don't manage to make a viral campaign, it's very difficult to have a successful crowdfunding campaign. Okay, so basically, good advantages are that you don't need to give up equity. You don't need a business plan or due diligence. It makes you think about what you want to build and how to articulate it. Allows you to test consumer demand for your service and give you cash in advance. They are especially good for physical products because people like to receive like a sample of the product once they fund it, etc. But yeah, the disadvantages of the crowdfunding model is that one is that to create a good campaign is very expensive, very time consuming, and it could probably not deliver the results that you were expecting. You have to get the traffic to your campaign for it to be successful. Most startups are not suitable because, as I was saying before, the people like it the most when they will receive a physical product. So if you're a SaaS company or something that doesn't necessarily create a physical thing, it's harder to get the money. And you can easily get the pricing wrong and start losing money if you made a lot of promises to the people that handed you money. Okay, so key things to have in mind when you're bootstrapping: you have to reduce your personal costs. Okay, this is a must. It's basically if you have $1 that you save, that is $1 of profit. A good thing to do is to go live somewhere cheap that is also a startup hub. There are a lot of places that are relatively cheap. I can think of places like Thailand or Southeast Asia in general, but also in Latin America, there are good startup hubs that are less expensive than ecosystems in the developed world. Prepare for changing life circumstances for you and your co-founders, because you will be. It's for a couple of years. You will be maybe poorer than you used to be. So say bye to your ego. It's something that you do for the love of it, and because at some point in the future and not necessarily close, you make it work. And then you can also, besides the personal costs, also you have to reduce the business costs. Leverage on other platforms. You don't have to create a whole platform for your building. There are a lot of platforms that you can use for free or very cheaply on the internet now. You have to try to focus on your niche or on the actual thing you're building, and don't try to do too many things. That's also related to the fourth one, the work Pareto. Work on the 20% of, dedicate your work to the 20% of things that generate 80% of the value. Use freelancing platforms to hire, and delay as much as possible forming a legal entity. I mean, in some countries or in some industries, you'll probably have to do it as soon as possible. But if you don't really need to, don't go through that cost. business model tactics for bootstrappers. Before you start building, it's good to go, as mentioned before, with an already validated business model that you do some tweaks, do some changes, and to adjust the model to something that you feel hasn't been tried before. Develop an MVP with basically the core feature and nothing more, to test how demand, what demand it has, and how and get the complaints from people, get the feedback from people, so you can change it and improve it as soon as possible. Try selling in advance. Build on existing product ecosystem, like Facebook game or WordPress plugin. Even if your product is not near competition, you have to think about how you can start making money next month. That is essential to sell as soon as possible. And sometimes it's good to develop only for the local market, because there is you don't have to compete with global and regional giants. Okay. And while you scale, make sure you pivot. You pivot a lot. It's essential for startups to pivot, especially once you already are getting money. I mean pivot with other products, because once you're building and scaling, it's good to pivot to see what the best things are, what the best products are for you. Raise prices, recurring predictable revenue. It's essential to have a revenue reoccurring to be a successful startup. So some soft skills for bootstrappers: say yes. It's essential to learn to say yes, especially to B2B clients. There's a saying in the US like that: fake it till you make it. So it's very good to get the client and then figure out how to build it. Of course, nothing crazy, but you don't have to promise the moon or whatever. But in general, if it's reasonable, you figure it out. Don't be shy. It's essential to hustle well, to grind, to be creative. Startup founders need to knock in all the doors. Find a good story that will get you free traction. This is very personal. Eli really used his digital nomad story to get traction for StartupBlink. And keep grinding and take the dip. Okay, aim for product founder fit. Salaries are almost always the biggest expense item. So given that you're the first team member, try building something that aligns with your skills, that most of the things that you have to do in the company, you can do them without having to get extra talent. Find a co-founder you trust and have past experience with. But also, if you're a solo founder, it also works very well with bootstrapping, especially when you have all the skills needed for the startup. Co-found only with talent that can do what you can't. A developer if you need one, a salesperson if you need one, because salaries, again, will be your largest expense in a startup, or at least top 2. And also make sure the partnership agreements are very clear. The vesting is a very important part of building a startup. So make sure you include vesting clauses, future equity events, etc. If you have a clear agreement, it'll be easier to keep your friendship with the person if everything goes wrong. Okay, so basically, another Another recommendation is to not work alone. What you build will be multiplied by your network, and that will be the final result. So if you have a great product but zero network, you won't be able to make it. And the same stands if you have the best network in the world from the best universities and business schools, but you are not able to build something people want. Okay, so yeah, pick the right ecosystem. That's always great for networking. Go to events and build a network of potential team members, co-founders, even investors. Don't ever shut yourself from external feedback. Stealth mode is for rich people. And surround yourself by fellow entrepreneurs and mentors that will have lived or will live stuff similar to what you're living and will help you with advice. Okay, so, and don't be afraid to kill the project if you think it's time to do it. When it's time to do it, of course, nobody knows, but you never want to become a zombie startup, a startup that is operating but is already dead. How can you know your startup is one? Maybe some of the startups in the crowd are one. We don't know, but some of these bullets can help you figure it out. You're very far from product market fit. You're not being able to sell easily. So if you close, no one will really care. There's no clear way of covering your costs and generating the revenue investment you need. People are not excited about it, and you are not excited about it. Those are kind of guidelines to see if your startup is a zombie. Okay, so that was it, everybody. Thank you very much for joining the webinar. Please, if you have any questions, let's hear them in the QA. Let me see. I have only been checking the QA, so I'm not sure if there was only one question. I'm not sure if in the chat there was others. 1 second. So yeah, let's stay connected through Facebook, LinkedIn, or Twitter. I'm gonna stop sharing now, but I'm gonna stay for the questions, okay? Okay, so I'm gonna go through the questions. Because I was seeing the QA. Okay. So how do I get a grant from Edwin? Where will you? There you will need to do research on possible grants. I mean, most of this stuff is on Google, or you can visit the local offices of government related to small and medium enterprises or startups, technology, etc., accelerators, corporations, but you have to do your own research about grants. And as we said, most of them are provided by government, but also big corporations usually provide them. How do I join accelerators? Well, you have to come up with a list of the accelerators you're interested in, and yeah, apply to them. It's good to talk to alumni and mentors to see what are the best practices to be accepted at them. We have here Dmitry Neginsky. He gave an idea of a non-equity accelerator in the UK. If someone is interested, NatWest, and it's aimed at bootstrapping startups. Okay, so Shem Joshua asks, how possible is it to grow the startup where banks are asking for bank statements in order to give you a loan? So yeah, for instance, most countries in Africa will do due diligence and ask a startup business owner to bring financial security. That's generally an issue in the startup world in general. It's very difficult to get a loan if you don't have let's say a physical asset to put as collateral. So if you don't have this, self-funding, family and friends, and if you need more money, professional investors are the way out. Okay, and I think those were all the questions. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for joining the presentation. If you have any other questions, please feel free to write to me, Gers, GHERS @startupblink.com, or also feedback@startupblink.com. Okay. Thank you very much. Have a nice rest of the day, everybody. Bye.